My name is Tasha. I'm 34 years old, and the night my husband called me pathetic in front of a table full of strangers, I wanted to climb under the white tablecloth and disappear. It was a Thursday, the kind of Atlanta evening where the air feels thick even after dark. I'd rushed home from the clinic, still smelling faintly like sanitizer and cheap coffee, just in time for him to toss a dress at me. "Wear this one," Marcus said, barely glancing up from his phone. My boss likes when we look put together at these things. The dress was one he'd bought on sale for my birthday 3 years ago. Tight in the hips now, a little faded at the seams. I'd been eyeing a new one online for weeks, but every time I got close to clicking buy, another bill popped up. Mama's blood pressure meds, my little sister's textbooks, the car needing new brakes. "Okay," I said, because that's what I always said. "Okay, no problem." I got it. He didn't ask how my day was. He didn't ask if I was tired after 12 hours on my feet. He just checked his watch and said, "Can you hurry up? I don't want to be late. This dinner is important." Important. That was his favorite word when it came to anything that made him look good. I changed in the bathroom, smoothing the dress over the soft parts of my body I still hadn't learned to love. I put on the good foundation, the one that actually matches my undertone, and twisted my hair up into a bun so it wouldn't frizz in the humidity. A little gold on my lids, some gloss, small hoops. I looked presentable. Not breathtaking, not glamorous, just like a woman who tried. In the mirror, my own eyes met mine. There was a long, tired question there I'd been avoiding for months. When is any of this going to feel like enough? "Babe," Marcus called from the living room. "Uber's almost here. You ready, or are you still doing your little face rituals?" I swallowed the sting at little, picked up my purse, turned off the bathroom light. On the ride over, he talked non-stop about his promotion. Assistant regional manager, Tasha. That's like one step away from the big chair. You know how many people want to sit where I'm sitting? I nodded, half listening, watching the city blur by. I was genuinely proud of him. I was the one who stayed up helping edit his emails, the one who ironed his shirts before interviews, the one who packed his lunches when he swore he was too busy to care about his health. But somewhere along the way, in his head, that turned into him doing it alone. "You gonna be on your best behavior tonight, right?" he added casually, no long stories. "Just keep it cute. Keep it cute." Like I was a pair of earrings he wanted to match his outfit. The restaurant was one of those places with dim lighting, concrete walls, and tiny plates that cost your whole phone bill. Candles flickered on every table. Couples spoke in low murmurs. A hostess with perfect curls and a tablet smiled at us, like we were important. "Reservation for Harris?" Marcus said, straightening his shoulders. She led us to a long table near the back, where 3 other couples were already seated. His boss, Mr. Caldwell, sat at the center like a sun everyone revolved around. His wife beside him, like an expensive accessory. Another assistant manager with his partner. A senior guy from corporate Marcus had talked about like he was God. Marcus's whole energy changed as we approached. His laugh got louder, his smile wider. He shifted into performance mode. The charming black man who knows how to code switch his way into pallets and pay raises. "There he is," Mr. Caldwell boomed, standing to clap Marcus on the shoulder. "The man of the hour." Marcus chuckled, soaking it in. "Just trying to keep up, sir." "And this must be your wife," Mrs. Caldwell said, looking me up and down in one quick scan that felt like a Scantron test I hadn't studied for. "Tasha," I said, forcing my voice not to tremble as I reached out my hand. "Nice to meet you." We sat. Waiters floated around like ghosts, pouring water, offering wine. Marcus ordered a bottle I knew we couldn't really afford, but I didn't say anything. I never said anything in rooms like this. I just tried to be invisible and interesting at the same time. The conversation started with work. Marcus talked about his numbers, his strategy, his ideas for tightening up the region. They nodded, impressed. I listened and tried not to think about the fact that I'd watched him fall asleep on the couch while I finished his monthly reports more than once. "My husband tells us you're a nurse," Mrs. Caldwell said pleasantly, turning to me during a lull. "I'm a medical assistant at the clinic," I corrected softly. "Mostly frontline stuff, intake, vitals, coordinating care. I'm studying to move into cardiac diagnostics eventually." "Oh," she said, that single syllable doing a lot of work. "Well, that's nice." That word, nice. The way people say at least before they tell you something that's barely passable. "It's actually pretty important," Marcus chimed in, and for a second, my heart lifted. "She keeps all the grandmas in Decatur alive so they can yell at us for sitting in their chairs." They laughed. It was a harmless joke, almost sweet. I let myself relax half an inch. "And you said you had some kind of little side thing?" asked the corporate guy's wife, frowning, trying to remember. "A tutoring something?" I felt my cheeks flush. "Oh, yeah, I do weekend workshops for high school girls, black girls mostly. Basic health literacy, navigating doctors' offices, understanding their own bodies. It started with my little cousin and kinda grew." I hadn't meant to say all that. It tumbled out before I could stop it, this small thing that actually meant something to me. "That's amazing," one of the other women said. "Like a program?" "It's nothing huge," I said quickly, embarrassed by my own enthusiasm. "Just something I do on Saturdays. I'm hoping to turn it into a nonprofit one day, maybe get some grants, partner with a local hospital. I've been working on the proposal." "Tasha," Marcus cut in, laughter in his voice. "Babe, come on." I stopped. Fork halfway to my mouth. "What?" He shook his head like I was a child who'd said something precious and foolish. "They don't want to hear all that." Several sets of eyes turned toward him, then to me. There was a strange silence hovering over the table, like everyone could feel a line had just been crossed, but no one wanted to be the one to name it. I tried to play it off, chuckling. "Sorry, I ramble when I get excited." "Oh, we know," Marcus said, a little louder now, leaning back in his chair. "She always going off about her little community classes and black girl health and whatnot. I keep telling her, 'Baby, these people are talking about real money. You sound—'" He hesitated half a heartbeat, just long enough for me to pray he'd find a softer word. "Pathetic," he finished, grinning at the table. "You sound pathetic, babe. Like some after-school special." We trying to talk big numbers here. It just hit me like a slap. There were a few awkward chuckles, the kind people do when they're not sure if something is actually funny, but they don't want to be the only one not laughing. Someone cleared their throat. Someone reached for their wine glass. My skin went cold and hot at the same time. I felt my ears ringing. The air in my chest thickened, until it felt like I was breathing through wet cotton. Pathetic. He didn't say it in a fight in our kitchen. He didn't hiss it in a whisper only I could hear. He said it like a punchline, like a clever, harmless joke, in front of the very people he told me were important. "I wasn't trying to," I started, but my voice came out thin, shaky. Marcus waved his hand. "It's fine, babe. I'm just saying, leave the big picture talk to us. You just keep doing your little thing. It's cute." I wanted to disappear. Right there, between the linen napkin and the empty breadbasket, I wanted to evaporate, to fold myself into something so small nobody could see me, or my stupid dreams, or the way my eyes were starting to sting. I stared down at my plate so hard the mashed potatoes blurred. "Actually," the assistant manager's wife said gently, "it sounds really important. My niece could probably use something like that." I latched onto her voice like a lifeline, but Marcus was already switching topics, turning his full wattage back to his boss, making some joke about sales targets and dragging the team to greatness. The conversation flowed on without me. Forks clinked, glasses rang. Laughter rose and fell in waves. I sat perfectly still, every muscle rigid, my hands pressed flat on my thighs so no one would see them shake. I could feel eyes flick to me and away. Sympathy they wouldn't dare show on their faces with their boss watching. Pathetic. The word echoed in my skull, bouncing off every time I'd stayed late for his laundry. Every morning I'd woken up early to pack his lunch. Every bill that had my name at the top and his comfort in the fine print. I blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall here. Not in front of them. Not for him. As I reached for my water glass, with fingers that didn't feel like my own, something on the table lit up with a soft, unmistakable glow. Marcus's phone, face up, screen bright. And that's when I saw it. It was just a little blue banner at the top of his screen, a rectangle of light in the dark. For a second, my brain didn't even register the words, just the movement. Marcus had placed his phone face up between us when he reached for the bread, casual, like there was nothing in the world he needed to hide. Then the notification slid down. HR Corporate. Subject: Formal Performance Improvement Plan. Action required. My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. The preview text was right there, glowing in that polite, professional font. As discussed, failure to meet Q2 expectations and additional concerns raised by your direct manager. Please review the attached PIP document before tomorrow's 9 a.m. meeting. Tomorrow's 9 a.m. meeting. Formal Performance Improvement Plan. I stared for a half-second too long, my fingers tightening around the stem of my water glass. The phone dimmed and the notification disappeared. Mr. Caldwell said something about market share. Someone laughed. A waiter appeared at my elbow and asked if I wanted more wine. "Ma'am, more Pinot?" I blinked up at him, dragged back into the conversation like I'd been underwater. "Oh, no, thank you. I'm fine." He refilled Marcus's glass instead. My husband didn't even notice. He was too busy talking with his hands, telling his boss how he was going to take the region to the next level, like he hadn't just gotten a digital pink flag on the table. I felt weirdly sober, pathetic. The word he'd thrown at me bounced around my skull, but it had lost some of its teeth. It sounded different now. Next to the words failure to meet expectations and performance plan, and as discussed. I swallowed hard, my throat burning, pretended to adjust the napkin on my lap so I could breathe without anyone seeing my hand shake. I knew what a PIP was. We'd had one at the clinic last year. Good CNA, bad manager, scary meeting. Formal documentation before termination, they'd called it. A chance to correct course. Everybody had understood what it really meant. You're almost out. Mr. Caldwell turned his attention down the table and the conversation shifted. I heard phrases like pipeline, upside, new territory. All the while the phone sat there, black and silent now, as if it hadn't just told me the truth my husband never had. "I'm just going to run to the restroom," I murmured. No one protested. I don't think anybody even really heard me except Marcus, and he only nodded without looking away from his boss. In the bathroom, I locked myself in a stall and leaned my forehead against the cool metal. For a moment, the humiliation from the table and the shock from that email tangled together into one huge, suffocating knot. He called you pathetic. He's the one on a performance plan. You're boring them. He's about to lose the job he's performing so hard for. I took a deep breath, then another. I counted them like I tell my Saturday girls to do when they panic at the clinic. 4 in, hold for 4, 6 out. My reflection in the mirror when I finally stepped out looked wrecked. Eyes a little too shiny, foundation cracked at the edges. I fixed my lip gloss, washed my hands slower than necessary, stared at myself. "Get it together," I whispered. The automatic voice in my head, the one that had grown up in church pews and cramped apartments, tried to comfort me. "He's under pressure. He's scared. That's why he lashes out. You just gotta support him through this season." But another voice, quieter and sharper, slid in behind it. "You found out by accident. He didn't tell you. He brags to you about promotions and big chairs, but keeps the risk a secret. He calls your dream pathetic, while his reality is hanging by a thread. I thought about the bills with my name on them, the way he'd told me that morning, this dinner is important, like we were a team marching into battle. The way he'd thrown me under the bus the second his ego needed a boost. Important? To who? I dried my hands, tugged my dress back into place, and in that fancy restaurant bathroom, under 2 bright lights and a vent that whistled, something inside me shifted. It didn't feel like some movie moment where a woman suddenly becomes a superhero. It felt more like a weight sliding from one side of a shelf to the other, making it tilt. I had always thought Marcus was the one standing between us and disaster. He was the provider, the one with the corporate job, the one whose important dinners I dressed up for. I had been the support staff, at home and at work, taking vitals, taking notes, taking on whatever needed to be done. But I had a job that wasn't on a PIP. I had a side program that didn't depend on his approval. I had girls who showed up for me on Saturdays because they saw me as something other than pathetic. And he was a man who called his wife names in front of his boss, while an email with the words, "failure to meet expectations," sat in his pocket. I walked back to the table slowly. Like I was walking back onto a stage I suddenly understood the script for. Marcus glanced up when I sat down, his eyes skimming my face. Maybe he saw that something was different. Maybe he didn't. He reached for my hand under the table, gave it a squeeze like we were still a unified front. "You good?" he murmured. My first instinct was to shrug and say, "Yeah, I'm fine, like always." But I just looked at him for a second. At the man who had used my tenderness as a prop and my silence as a cushion. "I'm good," I said quietly. "Just needed a minute." He smiled, relieved, and turned back to Mr. Caldwell. "As I was saying, sir, I'm really ready to take on more responsibility." I tuned them out. Instead, I replayed the banner on his phone in my mind, word for word. I pictured the HR inbox it came from, the attachments he hadn't shown me, the meeting he'd forgotten to mention over breakfast. While he talked about upward mobility, I thought about stability. Mine, not his. While he laughed too loud at his boss's jokes, I thought about my girls at the workshop repeating after me. "You are not crazy. You are not dramatic. Your feelings are data." This was data. By the time dessert came, a tiny square of cake with 3 dots of sauce, trying to be more impressive than it was. I wasn't thinking about crawling under the table anymore. I was thinking about the fact that my husband's mask had slipped in front of me, not them. They still saw the confident up-and-comer, the man who ordered expensive wine and made loud declarations about regional numbers. I was the only one who had seen the truth. He'd called me pathetic in public. And right there, between the creme brulee and the check, I realized something that made the shame drain right out of me, leaving something harder in its place. He wasn't above me looking down. He was standing on a cracking floor, grabbing at me so he didn't have to feel it move. I smiled when they all stood for pictures, tilted my head just right, played the role one more time. But inside, the question that had lived in my mirror all year had changed. It was no longer, when will I be enough? It was, how long am I going to let a drowning man call me pathetic while I'm the one who knows how to swim? The funny thing about a moment that changes everything is how ordinary the next day looks. There was no lightning bolt the morning after that dinner. No dramatic suitcase by the door. I woke up to my alarm at 6:15, like always, rolled over, and Marcus was already in the shower, steam hissing under the bathroom door. For a second, half asleep, I wondered if I had dreamed the whole thing, the restaurant, the word pathetic, the email banner from HR. My brain tried to file it away as a bad night I'd eventually laugh about. Then the bathroom door opened, and he stepped out, humming, towels slung low on his hips. "Morning," he said, like any other morning. You sleep okay? I watched him rummage in the drawer for his watch, the one he bought for the promotion. My chest tightened. He looked normal. Not like a man who'd been slapped with a formal performance plan. Not like someone whose future was hanging over a 9 a.m. meeting. I slept, I said. How was your dinner with your boss? He grinned at his own joke, leaning down to kiss my forehead, like we were in some commercial for a happy marriage. Don't be like that. You were great. Just, you know how you get when you talk about your little workshops. I had to keep things on track. There it was again, little. The difference now was that the word didn't make me shrink. It made something in me sharpen. He left for work at 7:15. Button up crisp, cologne cloud, following him out the door. I stood in the kitchen after he left, watching the Uber icon crawl across his screen on the counter. He'd forgotten his phone again. Old me would have grabbed it, raced down the stairs, flagged the driver, laughed it off as Marcus being Marcus. New me just stared at it. The lock screen lit up when I picked it up. Our wedding photo, my smile wide and hopeful, his hand on my waist. Underneath it, in tiny letters, meeting performance improvement plan, HR plus regional manager, 9 a.m. So it wasn't just an email, it was on his calendar. I could have opened it. His code was still our anniversary date, 1020. My thumbs hovered over the numbers like muscle memory. Then I put it back on the counter and stepped away. I didn't need to read every line to know what it meant. I'd seen enough through his masks. The overcompensating bravado, the big talk, the way his leg bounced sometimes when he thought nobody was looking. He had secrets. But so did I now. At the clinic, between taking vitals and explaining medications in plain English, my mind kept drifting back to that banner, to his voice at the table. You sound pathetic. To the way my face had burned while people pretended not to see. By lunchtime, the humiliation had burned off, leaving something clearer underneath. I had been playing one role in this marriage for so long I'd forgotten it was a choice. The supportive wife, the soft place to land, the one who says okay and it's fine and I understand when he's stressed or rude or cruel. Pathetic was a costume he'd put on me so he wouldn't have to look at his own reflection. On my break, I sat in the cramped staff room with my tuna sandwich and my off-brand chips and opened the banking app on my phone. Our joint checking stared back at me, the security blanket he loved to talk about when he wanted to feel responsible. I'd had my own account once, back when we were dating. I'd closed it when we got married, because he said, we're a team, baby. One pot. That's how real couples do it. I believed him. Now, staring at the numbers, I realized I had been the pot he'd just been dipping in. On my way home that evening, I stopped at the credit union 2 blocks from the clinic. It's the same one half my patients use, the one the grandmas trust. No marble floors, no espresso machine in the lobby. Just a bored-looking teller behind glass and a rainbow of pamphlets about savings goals. How can I help you today? She asked. I want to open an account, I said. My voice sounded steady, just in my name. She slid the form under the glass. I filled in the boxes. Tasha, Renee, Harris. And when she asked for my employer and income, I realized with a jolt that my numbers looked solid. Not flashy, not big chair impressive, but consistent, real. Do you want to set up direct deposit? She asked. I thought about Marcus's PIP, about his big plans and my Saturday girls. About the way he'd looked straight at me at that table and chosen a laugh over my dignity. Yes, I said. I do. By the time I walked back out onto the sidewalk, A new account number was sitting in my email. It felt like a small, private key. That night, he came home late. Face tight, tie loosened. He dropped his bag by the couch and let out a long sigh. "How'd your day go?" I asked, stirring the pot of beans on the stove. He shrugged. "Just work. You know how it is." I waited. Gave him a chance. He didn't take it. "Anything happen?" I tried again, gently. His jaw flexed. "Why you always gotta interrogate me? Damn, Tasha, can I just have a minute?" There it was, turning my concern into an attack so he didn't have to admit weakness. I'd seen that move 100 times. This time, I simply stepped back. "Okay," I said. "You can have a minute." I didn't mention the email. I didn't mention the meeting. I didn't mention that I had spent my lunch break quietly moving my financial center of gravity an inch to the left. He reheated food in the microwave, ate in front of the TV, and then fell asleep on the couch with his hand down his sweatpants while some show about rich people played in the background. At 11 p.m., I woke him up and told him to go to bed. He mumbled something about long day and promotion still on track. I just watched him go. The days that followed fell into a strange, almost surreal rhythm. On the surface, nothing seemed to change. He still left before me in the mornings, still talked about numbers and territories when he wanted to feel powerful. He still made little comments about my tiny clinic and Saturday hobby. "I swear," he said one Friday, scrolling through his phone while I folded laundry, "once this promotion hits, we gonna be out of this apartment and into a real house. You and your little girls club won't even recognize us." My little girls club. I smiled, smoothed another t-shirt into the basket. Sounds like a plan. Underneath, everything was changing. I stopped doing his work for him. No more late-night report editing. No more, "Can you just rewrite this email so it sounds more professional?" No more staying up until 1 a.m., massaging his bullet points while he snored, then dragging myself to the clinic on 4 hours sleep. "I can't tonight," I said, the first time he slid his laptop toward me. "I've got my grant proposal to finish." He blinked, confused. "Your what?" "For the workshops," I said lightly. "There's a health equity grant going. They're taking applications from grassroots programs. Submission window closes Friday." He snorted. "You and these little dreams. They're never gonna give money to some community thing run out of a church basement. Be serious." Old me would have wilted. New me just tilted my head. "We'll see," I said. "Good luck with your report." He stayed up late that night, grumbling at his screen, deleting and retyping, while I sat at the small dining table with my own laptop, writing like my life depended on it. I wrote about my girls, about the way their shoulders dropped when someone finally explained periods without shame, about the grandma who cried because she finally understood her insulin schedule. I wrote about translation between medical jargon and real people, about bridging the gap. I hit submit at 11:57 p.m. I didn't tell him. 2 weeks later, an email pinged my phone on my lunch break. "Congratulations, you have been selected for funding." It wasn't a fortune, just enough to cover materials, transportation stipends for the girls, maybe a small stipend for me if I was careful. I sat there in the staff room, half-eaten sandwich on my lap, staring at the screen as my throat tightened. Pathetic. The girl who got called pathetic at dinner had just been recognized as a program director by people who had never met her, but believed in what she built. When Marcus texted me that afternoon, "Pick up wings on your way home, I'm starving," I almost laughed. Instead, I texted back, "Can't tonight. Workshop is growing. I've got planning to do. There's leftovers in the fridge." The next crack came a month later, on a Saturday morning. I had just finished a session with my girls, 15 black teenagers in plastic chairs, notebooks open, eyes alert. We'd been talking about advocacy, about not letting doctors talk over them, about the power of asking, "Can you explain that another way?" As they filed out, saying their quick, "Bye, Miss Tasha," and "Thank you," I checked my phone. A new email from HR. His HR, not mine. I knew the address now. Subject, PIP review, status update. My stomach tightened. My finger hovered. Again, I didn't open it. I didn't have to. I knew what a status update on a PIP usually meant. When I got home, he was on the couch, TV off, just staring at the dark screen. "Hey," I said cautiously, "you okay?" He shrugged, eyes flat. "Company's restructuring," he said. "Nothing I can't handle." Restructuring. Another polite word for doors closing. I set my bag down slowly. "Do you want to talk about it?" "God, Tasha," he snapped, suddenly animated. "Can you stop? Everything doesn't have to be a talk. You don't get it. You work at a clinic and play games with little girls on weekends. This is real pressure." I felt the words hit, then slide off. "I'm gonna go work on my games," I said quietly. "We'll figure dinner out later." I didn't slam any doors. I didn't raise my voice. I just walked into the bedroom, shut my laptop, and opened a new document on the screen. Budget. Solo household. Exit plan. Bullet point by bullet point. I wrote down what it would take for me to leave and not crash into the pavement. Rent on a small one-bedroom closer to the clinic. Car insurance. Phone. Groceries. How much of my clinic salary I'd need. How much the grant could safely cover. How long I needed to quietly funnel money into my new account before the cushion was thick enough. My fingers shook, but not from fear. I felt awake. Over the next weeks, I became an expert at playing the role Marcus had written for me while rehearsing my own script in the background. In front of his friends, when he teased me about my little nonprofit, I smiled tightly and sipped my drink, letting them believe nothing had changed at home. I rerouted my direct deposit entirely. When he asked why the joint account balance looked lower, I shrugged and said, "Bills, groceries, you know how it is." At church, when his mother asked when we were going to buy a house like real adults, I smiled and said, "We're working on it." In my head, I was picturing a tiny apartment where every single thing inside had my name on the lease. I didn't nag him about money anymore. Didn't lecture. Didn't warn. I let him swipe his card for takeout and drinks with coworkers, watching quietly as his denial piled up above the warning line. I did, however, keep receipts, literal ones. The day I happened to be home when the mail came and saw an envelope with his company's logo, thick and official. I waited until he got in the shower that night and watched from the bedroom doorway as he opened it at the kitchen counter. His shoulders slumped. His hand went to the back of his neck. For a second, I saw naked fear on his face. He shoved the letter into the junk drawer with the takeout menus when he heard the shower shut off. Like that made it go away. I waited until he went to bed, then quietly walked into the kitchen, opened the drawer, and took a photo of the letter before sliding it back. Final review of performance improvement plan. Termination pending. So, it was coming. Maybe not that week. Maybe not that month. But soon. One night, lying in bed with his back to me, scrolling through his phone, he said, "Caldwell's having another dinner next month. Wants to celebrate the team. You'll come, right? No weird speeches this time. Just look good and smile. I'll need you to co-sign something too. They're talking about expanding, and I can get in on the ground floor. Big opportunity." A cosign, of course. I stared at the dark ceiling, the dim blue light from his screen flashing against the wall. "What kind of something?" I asked. "Just a little line of credit," he said. "Business stuff. You know you don't need to worry about the details. It's my lane." That quiet, sharp voice inside me almost laughed. "Sure," I said instead, my tone mild. "We can talk about it." He heard "sure" and relaxed, rolling onto his side, kissing my shoulder. "That's why I married you," he murmured. "Ride or die." I lay there, very still, feeling his breath warm against my skin. Once, that kind of line would have made me feel chosen. Now, it felt like a warning label. Ride or die. I had been doing the first without realizing he'd decided I was the one who would do the second if things went bad. I wasn't gonna die for his ego. The night of that second dinner, as I zipped up a new dress, the one I'd bought myself with my own grant stipend from a sale rack after work, I looked at myself in the mirror. Same face, same tired eyes, same woman who had sat at a table and swallowed the word pathetic like poison. But there was something different in the way my shoulders sat, the way my chin lifted. I wasn't walking into this dinner to disappear. I was walking into it with a bank account he didn't know about, a funded program with my name on it, copies of letters he pretended didn't exist, and a plan for what I would and wouldn't do when he slid those papers across the table and tried to drape his sinking weight over my future. Marcus thought I was still the same soft place to land. He had no idea I was the one quietly building the ground he was about to fall onto. The second dinner felt like déjà vu. Same restaurant, same dim lights, same concrete walls pretending to be classy. Different dress. This time, the dress was new. Navy blue, soft, with a neckline that made me feel like a woman instead of a prop. I'd bought it myself, on my own card, with money from the grant that Marcus swore I'd never get. "Okay, now that's what I'm talking about," he said when I stepped out of the bedroom. "See? This is promotion wife energy." I watched him say it in the hallway mirror, adjusting his tie, rehearsing his smile. He hadn't mentioned the PIP. He hadn't mentioned any restructuring. As far as his mouth was concerned, we were still on the big chair storyline. On the ride over, he filled the car with noise. "So listen," he said. "Tonight is kinda like more than just dinner. Caldwell's bringing his boss, and HR is gonna be there too. Don't freak out, it's normal. They just like to have everyone in the loop when we talk next steps. I'm gonna bring up this expansion idea. There might be some paperwork later. You just smile and back me up if we talk about the line of credit, okay? Show them we solid." There it was, the cosign, wrapped in "we." "Paperwork?" I asked, my voice even. "Tonight?" "Not like signing," he said quickly. "Just, talking, setting the stage. You don't have to worry about the details." That's my lane. You just be cute and supportive. Cute, supportive, pathetic. I looked out the window at the passing streetlights and let him talk. My phone buzzed in my purse. I glanced down discreetly. A text from my Saturday assistant, Joy. "Workshop numbers just came in. Waitlist is full. We might have to add a second session. You did this, T." My chest warmed. I tucked the phone away before Marcus could see the smile I couldn't hold back. At the restaurant, the hostess recognized us. "Welcome back," she said. "Table for Harris?" "See?" Marcus said under his breath as she led us to the back. "We regulars now. That's what success looks like." The table was longer this time. At the head sat Caldwell again, but tonight his posture was different, straighter, more guarded. Beside him was a woman in a sharp navy blazer with a company pin on the lapel. HR. I recognized the face from the tiny circle in the email header I'd seen on his phone. "Marcus," Caldwell said warmly, standing to shake his hand. "Good to see you. And Tasha, welcome, welcome. You look lovely." "Thank you," I said, taking the chair between Marcus and the HR woman. She smiled at me. "We've heard a lot about you," she said. Something in her tone made me wonder exactly what she'd heard. The first 20 minutes were small talk. Weather, traffic, some joke about Atlanta drivers. Wine poured, menus opened and closed. Marcus kept jumping in, a little too eager, each joke landing just off-center. "So," Caldwell said finally, after the appetizers arrived, "before we get too deep into the evening, I want to thank everyone for the work you've been doing. It's been a challenging quarter." I felt Marcus stiffen beside me. "That's why we wanted HR here," he said lightly, trying to preempt whatever was coming. "To talk about how I can step up in the new structure. I've got some big ideas for territory expansion and—" "Marcus," the HR woman said gently, "let's take it one step at a time." The table quieted. Forks paused midair. I watched her reach into her leather portfolio and pull out a folder. Not a thick, legal, doom-colored one like in those TV dramas. Just a simple, branded folder with the company logo on it. But the way she slid it onto the table between them made my stomach drop. "We've been meeting about your performance plan for the last 90 days, she said, voice low but clear. "You know that." I watched his jaw clench. He nodded once, barely. "As we discussed in your last one-on-one," she continued, "there were specific metrics that needed to be met. Customer retention, documentation accuracy, leadership feedback." Marcus laughed, high and quick. "Yeah, and we've been making progress, right? That's what I was saying in my last email. I've been hustling, putting in hours. You know I'm committed." I watched Caldwell's face. The muscle in his cheek jumped once. "Marcus," he said, "this isn't easy. You're a smart guy. We've had good moments, but the numbers are what they are." Silence settled over the table like a heavy cloth. HR pushed the folder a little closer to him. "This is your final review," she said. "We wanted to talk through it in person before anything is finalized." I felt my heart rate pick up. My hand stayed steady in my lap. He stared at the folder like it might bite him. "You're doing this here?" he whispered. "At dinner? In front of your support system," Caldwell said quickly, glancing at me. "We thought it might be easier if you didn't feel ambushed. This is a conversation, not an execution." I almost choked on my water. Execution. That's exactly what it felt like. Marcus looked at me then, finally. Really looked. I saw the panic in his eyes, hot and wild. "Babe," he said, his voice tight, "tell them how much I've been killing myself for this job. She sees it. She knows. I've been taking calls at night, skipping weekends. Tell them." For years, that would have been my cue. I would have launched into a soft, earnest speech about how hard he worked, how late he stayed up, how much he cared. I would have made myself small so his story could be big. I met his gaze and felt the weight of every time he'd called my work little. Every time he'd said, "They don't want to hear all that," when I talked about my girls. The word pathetic echoed one more time, then settled. "Marcus does work hard," I said calmly. "I've seen that." His shoulders dropped in relief. "And I've also seen," I added, turning to HR, "that he's been under a lot of pressure. Sometimes when people are scared, they say things they shouldn't, especially to the people they assume will always absorb the blow." His head whipped toward me so fast, I heard his neck pop. "What does that mean?" he hissed. "It means," I said softly, "that the person holding you up can see when you're falling, even when you pretend you're flying." HR's eyes sharpened just a little, like she was clocking more in this room than performance metrics. Caldwell cleared his throat. "Look, Marcus, officially nothing is final tonight, but I want to be honest with you. We're recommending separation with severance. We'll support you with references where we can, but given the documentation—" He trailed off. We all knew what "given the documentation" meant. My husband's face crumpled, then hardened. "You can't do this," he said, voice rising. "I hit targets. I brought in accounts. I'm the only Black manager in this region, and you're cutting me?" "That's how this looks?" HR stayed calm. "We take those concerns seriously," she said. "But the issues in your file aren't about race. They're about conduct. I can walk you through each incident offline if you'd like. He opened his mouth, closed it. His eyes darted to me again, desperate now. Tasha, he said, grabbing my hand under the table like he was drowning. Tell them about our plans, the house, the expansion. We're already talking to the bank about a line of credit. I got opportunities lined up. They don't need to worry about me, right? Every eye at the table shifted to me. I felt his fingers gripping mine, sweaty and tight. This was the moment he expected me to perform, to smile and say, "That's right, we're solid, we're a team." To reassure his boss, his HR rep, his ego. Instead, I gently slid my hand out of his. "We're not talking to the bank," I said calmly. "He is." His head snapped toward me. "What?" I took a breath. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. "You asked me to co-sign a line of credit," I said. "You wanted to put my name, my credit, my future on the line for a job you knew was sitting on a performance plan. You never told me about the PIP. I saw it by accident. At dinner. The same night you called me pathetic in front of your boss." The word landed on the table like a dropped plate. Caldwell looked down. HR's eyes flicked between us. "Tasha," Marcus hissed, color rising in his face. "Can you not do this right now? You're embarrassing me." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "You're worried about being embarrassed?" I turned slightly, addressing the table, without taking my eyes off him. "Marcus has told you about my little workshops," I said. "What he maybe left out is that we just received our first round of funding. A formal health equity grant. We have 32 girls on the wait list. 2 local clinics have signed on as partners. And last week, the city's public health office reached out about a potential collaboration." Mrs. Caldwell, who had been quiet all evening, leaned forward. "Wait," she said slowly. "You're the one running that Saturday health literacy program in South Decatur? I've heard about that. We had a presentation about it in one of our community outreach meetings at the hospital." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. "You... what?" She nodded. "They're using your program as a case study for culturally competent care. Didn't Marcus tell you?" I turned back to my husband. He couldn't even meet my eyes. Of course he hadn't told me. My work being praised in his circles didn't fit the version of me he needed to keep feeling big. HR cleared her throat. "That's impressive, Tasha," she said. "Programs like yours are exactly the kind of community partnerships we've been urged to support. If you're open to it, I'd love to get your information." Marcus stared at her like she'd just betrayed him personally. "Hold up," he said. "You cutting me loose and trying to do business with my wife?" "I'm not trying to do business with anyone," she said coolly. "I'm recognizing value where I see it." Something in my chest, the part that had shrunk at that first dinner, unfolded a little. I reached into my purse and pulled out my card. It wasn't glossy or embossed. Just my name, my title, the program logo my cousin had designed, and an email address. I slid it across the table to HR and Mrs. Caldwell. Marcus stared at the card like it was a betrayal. "So that's it?" he demanded. "You're just gonna sit here and act like you're better than me because you got some little grant? Like you didn't benefit from my job all these years?" I looked at him, really looked. The man who'd called me pathetic while his own career was quietly hemorrhaging. The man who'd hidden his fear from me but expected to use my name as collateral. "I'm not better than you," I said softly. "I'm just not going to drown with you." His face contorted. "Wow," he said. "Really? That's cold." "Cold," I repeated. "You know what was cold, Marcus? Watching you laugh while you called my life's work pathetic in front of these same people. Not telling me you were on a performance plan when you were planning to tie my credit to your risk. Letting me find out about your 9 a.m. HR meetings from a notification banner because you didn't trust me enough to be honest, but needed me enough to co-sign." The table was silent. Even the waiters seemed to sense the air had shifted. I straightened my napkin, smoothed it onto the table. "I'm not co-signing anything," I said, voice clear. "Not a loan, not a lie, not a version of myself where I shrink so you can feel big." I stood up, My chair scraped softly against the floor. Tasha, he said, panic creeping into his voice now. Sit down, we're not done. You can't just walk out. I thought of that first night, of wanting to crawl under the table and disappear. I did walk out this time, but I didn't disappear. I reached for my purse, then paused and looked at HR. I'm sorry for the scene, I said. I know you all came here for business, not this. She shook her head. You don't need to apologize, she said quietly. You were just honest. That's more than I can say for some people I've met at this table. Caldwell gave me a stiff, almost respectful nod. There was discomfort there, but also something like understanding. As I turned to go, Marcus grabbed for my wrist. So that's it? He hissed. You gonna leave me on the worst night of my life? I gently removed his hand. No, I said. I'm leaving you after years of letting you make every night feel like mine. He flinched. You're my wife, he said desperately. You supposed to ride with me. I looked at him one last time. I did, I said. I rode with you while you drove us toward a cliff and told me I was pathetic for suggesting we look at a map. Then I walked away. As I reached the front of the restaurant, my phone buzzed again. A new email, subject line bold, funding confirmation, year 2 extension. I stepped out into the thick Atlanta night, the smell of rain on concrete rising around me. My new dress soft against my skin, my heart pounding with something that felt a lot less like fear and a lot more like a beginning. The first dinner, I'd wanted to disappear. The second dinner, I let him watch me leave.